Thank you very much for joining today. Let me introduce myself a little bit before I start ranting about all the things that we enjoy and learn and all the process to work, taking a company services into the cloud. I've been working in the insurance industry the last 3 years, but I had been working in the financial industry for the prior 14 years, both in Spain and in the US when I came in 2014, because someone convinced me that was a good place to go there and build a financial API platform for BBVA. Okay. We have been doing something for some Chilean bank in the years before, and they told me, hey, do you want to try here? And I arrived to Birmingham. There was this bank called BBVA here in town, and they offered me the possibility to come here and lead all this effort. And as I'm a little bit fearless, I said yes. So I arrived here, talked to my boss. I was telling Mr. Good that he asked me, I asked him, how many people are going to participate in this? I said, I don't know. There's nobody else more than you. So I had to start from scratch to try to build all this thing. And so when I arrived, the vision was kind of, hey, we're a bank. We have a lot of functionalities. We have a good website. We have a good mobile application, but we want to start exposing our capacity, our financial capacity, to be consumed by third-party companies. In that time, there was one of these fintech getting out of Iowa, Des Moines, that was trying to create a wallet. The name of the company was Duola. And they were trying to create a wallet. And I mean, for some reason, they reached out to us. And in that time, our business development manager thought that we were ready to do that. So I got here, and what I got, it was this question. I said, hey, how can we expose our banking capacity to third parties? Okay, of course, this has to be done in the cloud. I look around and say, hey, do we know anything about the cloud? It's no. There was no AWS experience. There was no any other cloud experience. I mean, I don't think even they were developed by that time. I'm talking 2014. There's almost 10 years from now looking past. So things were not as mature as they are. So basically, it's like, where do we start? Okay, it's just trying who's going to consume this. This was going to be technical companies. Technical companies wanted to consume via technical channels, normally exposure through some REST APIs, some authorization and authentication mechanism and whatnot. What type of things can we offer there? Okay, yeah, you're a bank, you offer a lot of stuff, but there are plenty of things that are not clear about how to expose or to consume. Is how can we make money out of this? Meaning that, okay, well, we want to sell them. How do we sell them? Which are the monetization mechanisms that we can expand around this? How do we leverage the existing technology? I mean, we were using SOAP services in the time, XML-based integrations. We have some enterprise service bus and some implementations in some backend services implemented in Java. And that was it. There was no way to consume our services directly more than through this enterprise service bus. And it was a little bit complicated. Yeah. What do we need to get there? I mean, which are the tools that we need to invest on to get this running? How can we build these services? Which are the technical decisions that we need to take? And of course, we want the bank still being running like a bank. We don't want anything broken there. So we were given an MVP time frame of 3 to 6 months to build this. Okay, so no team, no tools, no culture in-house. And every time I was trying to knock to any door, I want this Spaniard guy that came to this bank and they say, who are you? What do you want? I mean, it's what are you trying to do? Nobody was really understanding what we're trying to achieve here and how to do that. Okay, so basically we try to shape this up in 3 processes and 3 steps. Building this first MVP, like, hey, let's create something, let's use the cloud, and I will deep dive a little bit, but it was just first an MVP, then create the API platform, and then let's start maturing it and all the learning, try to put it in work. This process took us around 4.5 years. Okay, so I will deep dive into any of those steps. So the first thing is when we started was trying to define which is the way that we wanted to expose our services. And nobody would be surprised if we say that we were using REST and JSON as a way of the vehicle to access and export and consume the information. It was not so clear at the time. Okay, there was still a lot of web services integrations and what other things there. So we decided that this was the way to go. Okay, and everything that we were building, we were going to try to use this REST model to consume the services. Second thing was to try to define and establish which were the existing model in the company. Okay, not everything was real time. We had batch processes. Okay, so I mean, all our car or our business was working in several stages. It was not real time. There are plenty of reconciliation processes that need to happen when you're trying to perform monetary operations. Okay, so we were just trying to understand is, okay, let's put all this in the cocktail machine and let's just move it and see what we can get out of that. We didn't want to integrate directly with the technology. So we wanted to build something on top of the existing capacity that we could consume, but we wanted to reduce at maximum consuming the existing capacities in the platform. Why? Because they were not scalable. If we wanted to grow in the capacity or find people that were able to implement in more modern technical stacks, it was not going to be very easy. We had to build some basic service infrastructure. So we met with AWS. They took some people that we were starting to get together for the team and some engineering guys. We went to Atlanta. We were building our first S3 servers, our first database storage. We were just playing with the tool, but it was just that plain. And then just we needed to add some control about, okay, we don't want that the first service we put there, we have this denial of service input, we put out the bank, or we want to understand who is the person or the entities that are consuming. Okay, this was quite green pasture. So we found out that it was everything to do there. And what I did is just try to find some people to help us with this. So it was a reality shock. And you're like, okay, well, a lot of things to do and we have no clue. So I got part of my prior team that built these APIs in Chile, and I brought them to the US to help me. We look for some bespoke tools that were doing a little bit of all the throttling and API access that we could use to expose and at least ensure certain control access, but they were very ad hoc tools. We are not talking about any API gateway as we have today, but I mean, in the day, we didn't even have API gateway. So we were looking in the market. Kong was pretty immature yet when we were exploring as a tool. And again, it was uncharted territory for us. So we were also trying to ensure that we were not finding any problem from the security perspective or for the compliance perspective and risk, okay? So everything that we wanted to build had to be cipher on storage, and we wanted to ensure that any reporting, any financial reporting that we could get asked about was really taken care of, okay? So we were surprised that only 50% of our work was development. The rest was convincing other areas that we had to be good enough for them. So basically, we call them tribes on the day. So we got some DevOps guy, we got some developers. We started creating our services that were consuming they were building Java. We were building some microservices. Building Java, we set some architecture. This architecture allowed us to make calls to the backend ESB portal, that ESB services that we have there. And we created some rudimentary infrastructure or architecture for this project. So we were just thinking about this project, not even grow it. Yeah, we just created these services. We exposed through this bespoke type of API gateway there. We added some security layer that the bank provided to us. It was basic authentication for the services on the day. Okay, so each customer was going to get some special credentials for them to be able to call the API. And in that moment, we only had a customer, so that didn't seem to be a big deal. And then the most interesting thing is that we had to replicate the real time that the services were providing with non-real time. So basically, we were building a wallet API. This wallet API allowed you to put money or to get money from an account that was for benefit of the users. So it was an account that was storing the money of all the customers. We were we built a virtual ledger. So each operation that we were doing was stored in that ledger saying, okay, Andrew has put here $100 and took $50, so he has to have a balance of 50. Or Richard just took out the $200 that was there so that his balance is zero. And if someone tries to take more money than they had, we were going to say no. But all those was virtualized. And behind the scenes, at the end of the day, we had a reconciliation process that matched all this virtual infrastructure that we created in the cloud. All these databases and all this data was just consolidating with the real banking process. So we had some collateral money associated to save it in case that there was some risk or whatnot, but everything flew really well. So basically, as after 6 months, we had an MVP in production that was being used by this company, Duola. And also we were able to offer real-time operations in a non-real-time transactional environment. And the truth is that, I mean, the architecture that we were creating was quite simple, okay? Just create some security controls and then have services. We had one microservice per each of the REST endpoint that we were exposing. We were creating a lot of different environments, and we were connecting to our real core backend. All this was built by hand. So the DevOps was there, I would say almost 24/7, just creating servers, putting down servers, configuring rules, configuring security access, creating a new environment, whatever. We have a person that was basically, our DevOps really was not automating anything because we didn't have time to automate, and we didn't even know what we wanted to take care of. So, well, after these first 6 months we got a real API prototype that was consumable by a third party. We learned how to start working with AWS, like how to access to the services, how to start controlling the different parts that AWS was supporting for us, and all the financial aspect of it. And we were educating a team to understand how the cloud was helping us to interact with our platform. I have to say that most of the time we were flying below radar. We were those crazy guys working in something called cloud that is doing things with the bank. So we really didn't have a lot of pushback in that time. We knew our deal, so we were trying to be safe, playing with the corporate regulations and challenges that we could have there. But that was quite straightforward and easy to achieve. And as I was saying, our architecture was it was artisanal. I mean, it's the day that the DevOps was not there, probably nobody else was going to get a new environment to try something. Of course, zero scalability, the way to grow a team or to build things were really, really limited. And our software development lifecycle was not mature and whatnot. So we knew that we needed to harden a lot all these aspects if we wanted to really build or move into a second stage where we could grow the platform and create something more stable. Any question, any concern, any comment before moving to the second stage? Okay. So the second step was mature this API platform that we were creating, okay? So as we were creating these very specific services around it, we decided to create some verticals on top of this API definition, okay? So each vertical will be dealing with the different nature of the underlying infrastructure and core capabilities to achieve what we were expecting. So if we were working with customers, we needed to focus on capturing this customer information, taking into consideration things like the know your customer regulation and everything related to personal data that had not to be accessed and shared and whatnot. Bear in mind that we were building just a layer of capacity on top of our core. So every additional storage, every additional flow of information between our core and what the customer were consuming had a lot of, or required a lot of controls. Some stuff is specifically for the customers. When we're talking about deposit accounts, it was easier. It was more managing the balances and knowing who is moving money where. And if there was no money laundering behind the scenes trying to happen. So we had some certain risk controls on that. When we're talking about money transfer or credit card management, it was all about risk. So we had to start figuring out how to get support from other third parties to support on that because we didn't have that capacity in real time. So we had to start dealing really with the business needs of the financial platform, and then also try to scale the capacity in our teams to be able to replicate the same model with one team standalone to grow and have more teams working in a cloud platform with a defined architecture around the services and a very well-defined ways of consuming backend services. So that was kind of the challenge that we established. Yeah, so there are several elements that we did there to take care of that. First of all was sandboxing. So the traditional approach to sandboxing with APIs is you call this API in a sandbox environment. I give you some hacked data, which was great, but we wanted to go one step further. We wanted to ensure that any services that we were implementing also took care of the business logic. I will show a little bit more about this later. So our sandbox was a really a smart sandbox where all the validations for the business logic were happening. The only thing is that we were not hitting the system of record. We had some virtual database. So when I was just trying to perform any operation, if I had to validate that the user was created, that he was completely enabled, that the funds were available, all those validations were part of the service implementation. We were trying to avoid the give me some dummy data, and that's it, to test our platform. This would allow our customers to go there, play with the APIs, ensure that any front end that they were building and the responses that we were providing were following certain business validation before really hitting the core and record data or read extra data from the system of record. So there was a very interesting model that we implemented around sandboxing. And it was also, everything has to be self-service. So customers should come there, provide their information. There was some behind the scenes validation to ensure that they were a legitimate customer, legitimate platform and whatnot. And then we would be creating credentials for them to access through our portal to go there. The developer portal was also a very critical element for this strategy. We wanted to ensure that the information was accurate from what the services offer, but also how to consume those. And this was great because we have different customers playing with different technologies. So it was very easy for them to go to the portal, get the service, get a client that consumed that service, and they were easily starting to be able to create data, validate the flows, and get something without necessarily having a very challenging infrastructure to provide that. For the API development platform, we would just need it to just ensure that we have pretty well-defined model. We have a team across the other different teams that which is validating that everything that was built through the API was adhering to our standards for the bank, that were adhering to our technical standards about, it's ensure that if you are calling several times the same service, the information is not stored twice. So trying to ensure that all the identity of the operations were maintained. If something was failing in the flows, the operation was properly tracked. There were different needs around the API, the development platform for real-time APIs, for different APIs that was defined and shared across the different teams. The third one was the processes. So, and I will talk a little bit more about that, but how the CI/CD pipelines were able to work. How could we integrate different platforms running different stacks to behave in the same way? So we wanted to do completely unattended releases, okay, and ensure automated rollbacks, and a lot of other things that would allow us to change the information almost in real time. And finally, last but not least, is in order to do digital offering, which we should be able to provide a proper control on everything that was happening. Okay, is who is using for what, how much money is being moved through these APIs, how many cars. Just create a really business dashboard from the very beginning. So everything that we were building had to be trackable, and we wanted to create different levels of reporting for compliance actors, for business actors, for customers, etc. So it was something that we wanted to have at the core of this digital transformation. Basically, one of the things that we did is just wanted to go check all the services and define, which was the behavior for each of those. Yeah, so we wanted to ensure that we had a real clear understanding which were the business drivers for every piece that we were building, but also which were all the technical drivers. Okay, so we created this matrix to ensure that our capability was always business driven. We had some bad experience at the very beginning where we created, it was 20 services and only 5 of them were really used, and we had put a lot of effort on the rest. So and those were mostly maintenance APIs and whatnot. We could have avoided all this work. So we decided that from that moment on, trying to create a better model approach to understand which makes sense to build or where it makes sense to spend your money while building this type of things. So one of the things that, as I was saying before, one of the things that we put a lot of time is just trying to create a good sandbox model that was not just give me some dummy data, okay? So the process was following basically these 4 steps. So we were having this monolithic service. So what we did first is just create an API that was slightly consuming it, okay? So we were pointing out to the monolithic service in non-production environment or in production environments. The second thing that we did is this data stub approach where, okay, if you are using the sandbox, you return this data stub, but if you go to the real stub, you go there. And the third step that we put a lot of time and effort and was really, really useful was this full sandboxing model with the business logic for the monolithic service was somehow extracted and placed as part of the API. So we could test a lot of the behavior of that service, including the business logic and the data before really connecting to the real stuff. Otherwise, only in integration environments or even later, we would be able to test this. And that was giving us certain acceleration so that people could easily start onboarding, testing the services, and the transition to use the services in the real environments were really smooth. And we had a couple of these really good use cases when we were integrating Simple Bank, a full bank platform to consume our services. This took us around 2 years since we started until we got the model more or less well established. Okay, so we were going through this path, and when we were in this basic API sandboxing model, and we thought, this seems that this could be the way to go, is we had a lot of problems to validating our APIs. And this is because, well, we wanted, this is I will talk a little bit more later about these CI/CD pipelines, but the development portal is one of those most critical things that we did there. And it was one of the things that our customer mostly appreciated, okay? Because really it was cheap. It's cheap to build good documentation. If you have some decent APIs, it's very easy. So we wanted to lower the entrance to consume the different APIs really fast. And this was critical for us to go there. Everything was connected to some place where they could play with it, being a dummy sandbox or their own sandbox. So they have full testability, something that today you can do with tools like Postman or any other API consumption. We're part of our developer portal like 8 years ago, because there was nothing that like this in the day. So we were starting to use, well, I don't remember the names of the tool now that we had. There were several API platforms that we were trying to use, and we couldn't get this deep integration that we have been able to. We were able to support on the day. So all this API development model was just trying to establish also some architecture. So our DevOps team started working on really automate the provisioning of any developer environment, to automate all the migration of any type of code through the environments in an automated way. Just push your code to your repository and move forward. So the DevOps team really, they terraform all our instances. We were using hardening images to create everything. It was mostly S3 on the day. We started doing something around Kubernetes, but it was still not mature enough from our perspective to use to run all our loads. So this DevOps team was all about infrastructure, and this API architecture team was the one building the APIs and all the infrastructure and connection elements. All the development teams were working under the same perspective, and they were able to consume any environment, any API in a self-managed mode. We were running tests automatically every day at the end of the day. I think that on P we could easily have had around 10,000 tests that we were creating. So we were using all these strategies about building first the test before the code. And the fact that we were exposing the business logic as part of our APIs, even when we are not connected to the core, allowed us to test thoroughly all the business logic of any API that we were implementing in a way that would let us to really automate. We also were self-provisioning our data. So for every test, I could create my user, I could create an account, I could create a card, and then I could run all the operations that test were pushing really easily. We ran out of account numbers a couple of times during those 4 years, basically in our testing environment against the real core backends. they had to reset their card numbers. We were run out of users. So we got to the max users because, as I was saying, every day we were creating a lot of users, same as other systems. So we were banned for running daily tests. Okay, so we had to move to run our tests 2-3 times a week because otherwise the rest of the platform was not performing. We were also, as we were for our test, we were using some Lambda functions there just to start growing until we had all the tests running. So we were so efficient creating a load there to test everything that we were putting down our backend every time that we were running our test. We just created, I don't know, 1,000 agents running each of them its own test. So we could do that fast, but the backend system was not scalable enough to support that. So we had to phase out those tests and run them with lower loads. So it took longer, but I mean, at least we were not putting down the system. The first time, I mean, all our CI/CD has to be done by the CI/CD development team. So being a big bang, all the deployment of the platform and all these things were following the more traditional approach, like give me a list of all the steps that I need to do, an operation or operator need to do in production, and I will be clicking all these, and after 2 hours, all the system will have migrated into the new work. We were using Jenkins CI/CD pipelines at the time, and it was all automated. You just needed to tell the build that you wanted to deploy for the services, and that was it. And I remember the first day we went to the guy and said, this is the screen where you have to log in to do deployment. So, okay, where are my notes? No, you don't have notes. You just need to know that you need to deploy this version. You click this button and say, what happens if it fails? If it is red, you click this other button and deploys the prior version, and that's it. So the guys were, I mean, it's person that had been like, I don't know, 15, 20 years doing that. It was very interesting to see how easy it was for them to move to this new model, and to the point that a lot of evolution happened in parallel to all our migration to the cloud, because a lot of other areas were also trying to follow up and learn which were the good things that we have been doing. Okay, so I think that the API platform model that we created, and just we also give full ownership to each of the teams about the things that they need to build and how they had to test it and how they were responsible for their own staff. Minimizing the friction between teams was very key. The only thing that were shared were the DevOps team and the architecture teams to move forward. The other thing is that there were not enough talent. It was hard for us to find talent here in Birmingham or train people. So we started to work in a distributed model, and we had 70% of our workforce distributed, mostly in Spain, because it was quite cheap. So we had tribes, full tribes distributed across different regions in Spain. What we had here in the headquarters in Birmingham, we had all the leaders, all the technical leaders, the DevOps team, and the architecture team. Those guys, those guys were responsible for ensuring that everything was working, and we were duplicating the role of the technical lead. So we have a local technical lead and a remote technical lead. They were not even the same time zone as you can imagine, but the thing worked really well because we were really enabling them and making the right decisions at the right level so that everyone could run on their own. And the technical leads were able to be connected. Okay, so the speed of delivery was amazing. We got to a point to have a weekly sprint. So they were really producing a lot, testing a lot, say, this is done, little demo, let's move on. We have to move to 3 weeks of sprint sometime after in the agile methodology, because I mean, we could not sync with the rest of the teams, and we just needed to pause a little bit to ensure that we were there. But it worked really, really well. And this helped us to grow from 0 to perhaps 80 people on peak on the technical department, just working on building services and connecting the backends. Only in the platform team. I'm not talking about other banking people that we were interacting with and whatnot, that they were the same that were serving the traditional bank. So what we just created a specific architecture where we had this corporate security. It was a software as a service that BBVA was providing us, ensuring all the controls and all the token generation for accessing the APIs. We had all these sandbox environments. That was this place where we have these fake databases to support all the API and services. implementation. Okay, so there was very much self-contained when we were talking about the sandbox, and the same code was then the code running in the real environments, connecting to the real backend. We started having a lot of events. We were starting to use SQS and all the related technologies just to start monitoring the events that were happening in the back and react upon those, or vice versa. Because we moved to building a wallet to be the full bank. So if there was some card that was generated or activated, we were able to ensure that we could consume that event and trigger the proper service to make any maintenance or operational aspect of it. If there was any payment that was being performed, we could notify to another platform to say, hey, this has happened, capture it, move forward, make any business decision around it. So we, in this stage, we didn't only create this architecture to enable us to test and consume information, but we were starting to generate more resilience around how the information was flowing. And then we had a lot of logs and monitoring for all our platform. The third thing that was important is also because of our open architecture of APIs and integration with third parties, it was very easy for us to integrate with other fintechs specialized in this case was KYC and the risk analysis for customers, such as Ideology and Secure. Okay, those were our platforms, and we were connecting through our infrastructure and security levels to ensure that all that was easy. Eventually, I know that we were integrating with other third parties, all follow the same model. I mean, it was pretty stable, and it was very easy to integrate without having to create additional communication levels between our core banking infrastructure and these third parties. So we built more than 100 services serving Simple Bank. Not all the services went live. Some of them that were the maintenance, because we didn't only wanted to provide services for consuming like accounts, cards, and transactions and whatnot. Also, we wanted to do the maintenance. Like, hey, if you want to check how many operations have happened. So we created a lot of services around maintenance that were very easy to build, just retrieve information that you can integrate in your own console. But customers didn't seem to be very interested in getting those. They were getting some other type of reporting, and they preferred the general reporting than the APIs. We had a growth model really solid. Okay, we could onboard new teams really fast and in a very clear, standardized model. Of course, we understanding our architecture and all the automation was really helpful to reduce the people necessary to maintain the platform. Okay, I think that on peak we could have had 3 DevOps total, and we were serving several tens of customers, including I would say in peak 120 developers in different places between Spain and the US. And we didn't have a lot of DevOps. First, because it was a scarce resource. Secondly, because most of the things that we were needing there were fully automated. And then our CI/CD model was working really well. I think for a year, we didn't have any relevant issue about pushing things that were not failing or were not up to speed. Our major concerns were other pieces that we were depending upon that had to be deployed were not deployed on time and whatnot. And unfortunately, we were not able to connect the core banking model to our model because they were super different. Okay, so some learnings is the cost. One of the things that happened with the cost with the cloud is that as soon as you are starting being successful, it's very easy to see how that growth is going there. Okay. And we found that the DevOps, we couldn't find enough DevOps. So we were trying some developers to move to the DevOps space to support us or have some blended knowledge between the DevOps team and some technical leads and developers. We started having a lot of oversight. So it was not only about having the platform should be running, should be stable, should have SLAs, should have a lot of things that in the first stage we were not even considering that were very relevant. So Amazon was starting to produce all this compliance documentation, and they were starting to produce some materials that were able to help us to answer and to track and to demonstrate that our platform was safe. Again, we have 2 or 3 internal audits, and I mean, they found things like some socials in our logs that should have never happened and things like that. So we started taking more seriously about every information that was detected as threatening or challenging to be deciphered. Unfortunately, we didn't have the AI capabilities that we have today, so we were just looking for patterns in many of the things that we were producing to generate these details. And the other challenge was that this was flexible enough to put in to challenge the bank infrastructure. I mean, it's any malicious actor could go there and start making API calls, and we would grow and answer, and we could just collapse some of the capacities on our core. So we had a lot of oversight on those parts to really have a rate limiting API call and whatnot. It was something that we needed. So all these controls were required to operate the backend scale. And then we moved to evolving the platform. So we had a platform running, and we just wanted to start moving more and more to the real-time data consumption. Okay. So we started finding that keeping the APIs or several versions of APIs were complicated, and we had to make some decisions from the V1 of the services, as you can imagine, in the first stage to the V2. And that was challenging. The reporting capabilities had to be aligned with the bank. We were facing challenges about, we are super flexible, but what if, I mean, if the core is slow, we're not going to be faster than the core. So how can we align the more traditional banking approach to services to what we were able to build? And then we wanted to reduce the cost by caching all the data, so we could have a full data read cached platform to consume the information instead of having to hit our backend. Our backend was host. The host was measured by MIPS, and we wanted just to reduce the amount of information that we needed to have there. So those were kind of some of the things that we wanted to do with the platform. Just be more banky, if you let me say so, and be more under the same controls and regulation, normally at the expense of being a little bit less agile. Okay, so the second thing is we have more and more customers. Customers are hitting, customers are issues. Okay, customers that jump into a version will be reluctant for a long time to change versions. So we need to be really good in our sales processes and our operational processes. So that was a little bit out of our control as we grew, but we found that we needed to be really, really careful about the evolution of the APIs in the platform, when and how to introduce all those breaking changes in the APIs. The good thing is that the changes in the backend, in the core systems, were normally muffled because we had certain control from the API consumption, but we were finding some requirements that forces us to do breaking changes. So we had to establish a migration path for other customers. That the reporting and the cost were kind of the elements that we focused on. We focused on this third stage. So basically what we did is just try to create separated support teams from the development teams to take care of that out of the same development team. So each team will be responsible for still supporting the APIs and the issues and the bugs. But we need to have some really good trained development teams to do all the supporting of all the queries, inquiries, challenges, issues. And those support teams were working very closely with each of the tribe to ensure that there was no different team dealing with an account API than the team that has implemented it. Okay, so, and this was a little bit challenging because we were in a model where the support team were making the fixes, not the development team. So we wanted to challenge that, and we had to create some support team that was very, very heavily embedded into the API team. And this really worked well because being developers and being part of the teams or have some rotation strategies that we had, support helped us to ensure that all the knowledge about the platform, the capacities and the tools were maintained across the process. Then we had to do several things. First, a functional segregation of the APIs. So some architectural decisions had to be evolved and changed. Okay, and we were able to create some models that would allow us to change part of the interface while keeping the business logic. We were able to re-architect the platform databases Okay, so we were using Redis for some stuff, we were using some RDS for other stuff. So we're just trying to start evolving to lower cost platforms and lower cost databases that would enable us to keep on the functionality while not raising the cost too much. Okay, we wanted to go to having the core as the source of truth. It was easy for us to decide which was the model that we had to move to. And we were trying to do a lot of caching database in memory. We were also trying to ensure that we had a good strategy about caching. So we had a good way to intercept any event that was modifying any data. So we have some queues for any change on any account or any customer or anything happening in the open platform account was monitored by the platform. So we were hooking into any event producing system. And when something was happening, we did two things. We were updating our cache database for the read and also updating our backend or any registry of information to know that the next time that a customer was going to do that, they would find the information without having to go to the backend. This was very significant in the case of card operations, okay? Because the card operations lived in a different database and we had to synchronize with our core, but we didn't want to hit the core to get the data. So we were reading all the card operation and just updating our cache. So immediately in any mobile application or any other digital channel, you could get the information in real time. It was quite challenging because it changed a little bit all our model, but the way that our business logic was created in the services and the way that we were routing to the core system or the real system helped us to do this migration. It took us some time, but it was not a big architectural challenge. And then this is the part of this, I mentioned this was this part of the operational event, okay? The other thing that we wanted to do is just also offer the companies a way to subscribe to events happening in our platform. So not only be like commies, not only be a pool system, but really have a way that we could have a PubSub for things. So we could have customers that were interested in offering loans for people that were performing certain operations about over a certain amount of, and they could just capture that if they were subscribed to our card events. So there was a really interesting models that we were creating there, creating special APIs, special subscription models. So our own customers or others could grow their business or collateral businesses using this. There was a lot of risk analysis and control analysis around how all these things were going to happen, but it was super interesting because people were starting to see, this was around 2018, 19, let's say 18. I think we were working on this in 18. People were starting to see the possibilities of the platform and all the things that could happen after that. So this was quite interesting. We had to change around 40-50% of the platform in some of the parts that we were creating there. And it took us 9 months to move from V2 to V3. Okay, so we had some breaking changes in the APIs I was mentioning, but all the greenfield customers would arrive always in our latest model. Okay. And eventually, I mean, there was a transition path, but we were able to convince the customers to go to the latest model. And sometimes we were accommodating the cost of the transition. Sometimes they were helping us. This was one of the things that surprised me the most. It's like, I mean, we were able to accelerate a lot of the reporting to the regulators. Normally, there was information system that captured that in the financial institutions. We were able to start creating automated reports and sending them to the proper actors or proper systems. That was super fast to do, super easy to do. I think that probably this was one of the most simple things to do once we knew and we had the information and we knew what type of format to produce and where to send. It was almost runtime, and we even had some consoles that they could use to go there and create their own information analysis if they needed to. Okay. And this was kind of the items that they were more concerned about. Okay. All the capital controls, how much money was in the accounts, any potential operation that could be deemed like risky or not. Operational controls, we were checking speed of operations. If someone was trying to take too much money too fast, this was tagged as a risk and reported properly. All the identification issues about who was performing certain operation, everything was really easy to achieve. Because I mean, we had the information. We have been putting the information somewhere. We just needed to ensure that this information was properly ciphered and consumed as it should. One of the cool things that the team did was precisely we have some rotating keys using the Amazon platform. So we were able to keep a continuous model of generating new keys to store the data, to cipher the data, but still everything was consumable in any moment in time, just knowing which the key that was, or the time for that the key was used, because we were using the repository of keys to retrieve. So we were able to renew while keeping the security of the information a long time. There was a lot of learnings that we did also around that. The cost was a pain. I mean, it's 1/3 of our budget was just cloud costs. Why? Because it was good. It was easy. Yeah, I need a development environment. Bomb. Here it is. You create 27 images. They live there for years. So we were trying to do some controls on it. And we had some tags here and there. We were trying to follow some practices, but still, it was not. I mean, we knew who was spending the money. The thing is, how can we reduce this cost? How can I allocate the resources in a different way? So it was more about how to, this thing that now it's called FinOps. It's just like, how could make this better? More just control, or people or customers using this, they need to be part of the expenditure because they need to understand the impact that they're having in the platform. So this brought a lot of interesting aspects around how to improve and how to reduce the cost on this. So our final model improved mostly our security elements. We have some corporate tool there that was really strong, and we had better systems on all the queues that we were using to notify the informations. I have some details. I mean, it's just a way to see all the pieces that were part of our platform when we were talking here. So we're using several repositories for our own information, Redis for more information that didn't need to stay there for too long. This is MySQL. We have different ways of exposing APIs that were consumed through some service locator that was finding it in our platform and on our elements supporting the execution of services. We were using all the queuing capacities in AWS. We had CloudWatch to clearly monitor everything that was going, triggering events, ensuring that everything was being taken care of. We had a lot of tools to reporting. We were using Mozilla, Grafana, and Kibana to create all our reporting around the things that we were doing. And then, of course, we had some special security to access all our data centers with some Bastion hosts and some control access to our backend platform. So we were actively doing also any type of penetration testing to ensure that our platform was safe, and the way that our APIs and tokens were consumed was continually monitored to ensure that there was no security on that end. So we were able to really take care of a lot of this platform. It was a 4-year transition until we got to the latest version, and it was really interesting. We managed to create a flexible financial service API platform. I think in P we had 20 customers doing monetary transactions, doing customers or account generation. They could build their own white label bank on top of the platform. We reduced the backend rates to 90% when we built the latest version of the platform. All the APIs and the evolution of the APIs was quite decoupled, so it was very easy to migrate. We had the regulation in place. We knew where our costs, SLAs were, and all the development and support model worked really well. Okay, I think that we were quite ahead. I mean, we had to step down a lot when we had our platform ready, just to ensure that the rest of the bank could also align in the requirements and the evolution of the platform. Okay, yeah, we had to pay a lot, because we were not looking at the cost too much. So when we started that, we were way ahead. So we needed to start trimming down and reducing and trying to improve the shareability of certain things. We needed growing customers. We didn't have enough customers to support the growth and scalability of the platform. So there was some area in sales that were just trying to go there. This was, again, year 2018, 19. We know what happened in 19. So there were some challenges there to keep on growing the platform. And I have to say that, my tenure of 4 years on the platform, we never had any major challenge there that was having us out of operations or not working as expected. We had some bugs here and there, but nothing relevant enough. So I think that we succeeded because we had a good API model. We built an interesting sandbox element. We aligned with the non-technical staff. I keep on saying that most of the platform was 40-50% about talking to risk, compliance, and legal teams. We were able to leverage anything existing in the backend. We didn't have to rebuild our core. In fact, we were able to change cores or to change functions very easily because we had the business logic segregated into the APIs. We automated everything and we monitor everything. So we were able to ensure that the platform was solid, robust, and was answering to the banking requirement and needs. Okay, well, I've been talking about these fun facts. I'm not repeating. So I think that we put down the backend several times in non-production environments. And that's a little bit the transition and the story that I wanted to share with you guys. I don't know if you have any questions or any comments on this.
Diego, that was terrific. Thank you very much for joining and talking us through this. Yeah, definitely. Bladen, it sounds like you've got a question. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was going to ask a question. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Jeremy. Yeah, Diego, this is really, really impressive. And I was kind of following along as you all did this. I remember when you were doing this. It's super impressive to see what y'all did with, given that you were doing this in 2014, which was, like you said, it's like the Stone Age of cloud computing. But I'm interested now. I may not have understood this, but did you say that the entire architecture is not multi-tenant? It's pure per customer, every aspect of it.
We were working, so we didn't have a multi-tenant architecture. We were trying to create an account per customer.
Account per customer. Okay, gotcha.
So we could, I mean, why?
You mean why did you go one account per customer?
Yeah, what I mean is,
yeah.
We went one account per customer because for us, given all the automation level that we had, it was easier to maintain. Okay.
Okay, right.
And then I know that we started having all these organizations model and whatnot. And I mean, a lot of things have changed in the last 5 years only. Okay.
Right.
In the time, we didn't have that. So we're trying to achieve that. Once BBVA started to looking at the things that we were doing, they wanted to, as a bank, to have more and more control on our capacities about the credentials, who was accessing to what and how. Because again, great part of this was to ensure that we have the proper organizational distribution. The fact that was one account per tenant also helped us to ensure the safety and security and segregation of the data.
Right.
So the problem was not in AWS, because I mean, we have not a lot of data there. The problem was in our core banking, because we created on top of our core banking some logical segregation. So although you were in BBVA core system, you had a different entity that was your own bank, and that was living in the same hardware and in the same software, just logically segregated. Okay?
Right.
And that's way more challenging there, because you needed to ensure that there was no visibility between the data of one and the other and who could access. So when we were discussing about this, hey, look, as long as we can, and as long as it's not a cost challenge, I would prefer to go with automated accounts end to end. So we do that. I'm working today with multi-tenant environments in my current responsibilities, and I think that we have more headaches than if we had taken this approach.